We are back, and we're talking about some NBA basketball today. I'm here with Shane here on the Mayo Show. It's a great time of year for basketball. I mean, we got March Madness around the corner. The conference tournaments are coming up tomorrow, actually. I mean, we're recording this pod on Sunday. Conference tournaments start tomorrow, so it should be exciting. But we're here to talk some NBA basketball as there's been a lot going on after the All-Star break. I'm here with Shane. Say what's up.
What's up? We're getting a little bit of a late start into this NBA season, first pod, and we're making it like 2/3 into the season. But we're gonna try to catch up today and hopefully talk about some interesting topics going into this final stretch of the regular season and then into some postseason.
Yeah, a lot to get into. But just talking about yesterday, I mean, what did you see that Lakers Warriors game last night? I mean, LeBron went brazy, dropped 56 and 10. I mean, I guess that's what he needs to do for them to win. I mean, they were just playing terribly before. They couldn't catch a win against the Pels or Mavs and whoever else they played before that. They just couldn't get a win after the All-Star break. And they finally got one against the Warriors, a much needed win at home.
Yeah, that was a tough game to watch as a Warriors fan, but it was really cool to watch just as a basketball fan to see a 37-year-old go off like that. It's just like it's insane to watch, like especially in that fourth quarter. I think it was like midway through, he hit three straight contested or deep threes, and it was like he was the best shooter on the court, like even with Steph Curry out there, like it's just crazy what like his game just keeps improving. Like he wasn't able to do that back even in his prime years, like 28, 29. He was never hitting from 30 feet on three straight possessions like that. It's just he like finds a way to add to his game in skill where his athleticism maybe comes down a little, even though he's still jumping with his head at the rim. So
Yeah, I mean, you gotta hope this is gonna spark something for the Lakers. They've been playing absolutely terrible as of late. They just can't get anything going. I mean, they look so terrible in the games before, especially against the Pelicans, um, where they were favored by 2 points in that game. They ended up losing by like 20 at home. I mean, it was just a lackluster effort, um, and the team is just they're just not looking good. I mean, Shane, what do you think is the problem?
it's hard to like pinpoint a problem because like even looking at last night's game, Russ had obviously been on a very awful stretch, but then last night shoots above 50% from the field, gives you 20 points. He did have some turnovers down the stretch, but like you think that you could just pinpoint it on Russ being the problem, but then he plays well and you still need 56 to barely win a game. So I think it's honestly just like a team thing. They just don't look like they have that desire to win really. Like I heard Mark Jackson talking about it last night on the game. Said like after the Lakers gave up a layup on a made bucket, he was just like that's how you know the team doesn't want it when you can't get back in fast break, when you can't like sprint down the court after a made bucket. That's how you know that they're just not there. So I think it's some of that. I think it's just this group of guys that you throw together. They just don't have the chemistry yet. Maybe next year, if they can run it back with some of these same role players. But it's just the team's been changing so much this year, so many injuries. So they haven't been able to get in a rhythm.
Hmm. And also, I've heard some interesting things going on, some speculation about LeBron possibly maybe going back to the Cavs. I mean, as a LeBron fan myself, I would love that. I mean, honestly, they look like a good team. Um, Darius Garland is kind of like what he's shaping out to be what LeBron had in Kyrie back in Cleveland, and we all know that went pretty good with them too in the backcourt. Um, but it's just an interesting thought. I mean, but it's crazy to think because LeBron got all these pieces into LA like Westbrook and stuff this offseason and like Malik Monk, and they haven't really done what everyone expected them to do. So kind of disappointing, but should be interesting this offseason.
Yeah, I think the Cavs would be really fun to watch LeBron back on. Obviously, we would get to see that duo, Kevin Love and LeBron, back at it again. Obviously, Kevin Love isn't where he was at 5 years ago, but that'd still be cool to see. And then, yeah, I think Garland and LeBron would be very fun to watch. But going into the flip side of that game, that Lakers versus Warriors game, getting into the Warriors just for a little bit. I don't want to spend too much time on them, but they've lost 4 straight. They're 13-9 in their last 22, which is obviously not something that you want to see for a top seed in a conference. And that 22 game stretch actually marks right where Draymond Green got injured and right where Klay Thompson came back. It was that exact same time. And, I don't really think you can say you can match it up with Klay coming back, because there's no way that they just got worse with Klay coming back. But you could definitely say that Draymond Green is the reason for their struggles mainly. It's just defensively, like they're giving up 7 more points per game without Draymond than they were with him. He's just such a great leader on defense, and then on offense, he's the only guy besides Steph who can really like run that. And when Steph's getting doubled, you need to give it to like Kevon Looney now to make playmaking decisions. It's just not working out very well right now for the Warriors. So, how do you feel about Draymond Green's impact, and how do you feel about how the Warriors will be doing once he comes back?
Yeah, I mean, it's just confusing. I mean, he said he was going to be back, after the All-Star break? He still isn't back. We just don't know when he's coming back, but the Warriors definitely need him and Wiseman and those guys to come back. They need to be healthy going into the playoffs. Not looking too great right now. Some bad losses lately. But Jonathan Kuminga, he's been playing pretty good lately, I've noticed. He's a key piece. I think he's going to be a good piece in the future. Steph Curry's started to play a little better after he
Yeah.
had sort of a slump, but hopefully they can get it going into the playoffs and have some momentum, because I think they need to have a decently higher seed, because they don't want to get a bad matchup in the first round.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of seeding and the playoffs, I have a little segment we can get into. Me and Joey are going to name our top three contenders from each conference, from least likely to most likely. We could start off in the West. Joey, who's your third most contending team in the Western Conference?
My third most contending team in the Western Conference, I think it's going to be the Memphis Grizzlies. I mean, they've just been playing really good. They have really good guard play, really good backcourt play. They're deep. Jaw's been playing awesome. I mean, I'm not gonna have them any higher than 3 though, just because a little younger. I don't think they have that ability to win in the playoffs like some of these other more experienced teams do. But I think they'll definitely get into the second round at least. I think they're definitely contenders. They've been playing some solid ball. They show that they can get the job done no matter where they are. And I mean, they're just a hot team, and I like them.
All right, who you got at number 2?
At number 2 in the West, I'm gonna have to go with. I'll go with the Warriors. I think that once they're healthy, they can definitely contend for a championship. I mean, we know that Steph and Klay, they can do it for sure. Steph can show up in the playoffs, and just them two and Draymond, we've seen them do it before in that 73-9 season. They can get to the championship, and they have the experience. They know what they're doing. They're going to help out these youngsters, and they're definitely contenders, in my opinion.
All right, and I think we all know who the number 1 is, but you can get
Yeah,
in.
I mean, I'm just gonna. My number 1 is the Suns. I mean, obviously, in my opinion, the health of Chris Paul is so key. I mean, without him, they just do not play as well. I mean, the Suns are so complete though. They have so much depth. I mean, Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson. I mean, we saw that game winner yesterday. Um, And I think that the Suns can beat teams like the Warriors and these other teams when they're healthy. So I think out of the West, Suns are the most contending team. What about you?
All right. I just want to preface this by saying our West list, mine is the exact same as Joey's, but I think once we get into the East, we'll have some discrepancies
Yeah.
there. But my number 3 in the West is also the Grizzlies. You can make a case for them being number 2, but like Joey said, they're just a little bit too young, I feel like, to put them ahead of a more experienced team like the Warriors. But I mean, Memphis is definitely looking great this year for the future. John Morant is looking like one of the best players in the league. Definitely took a massive step up this season, which is really cool to see. And they're a deep team. They have a lot of guys that could drop 30 on any given night, and then a lot of guys that are just consistent, doing their jobs right now. So I think, yeah, the Memphis Grizzlies are my number 3 contending team in the West. My number 2 most contending team in the West, same as Joey, the Warriors. We just talked about them, but yeah, I think if Draymond Green comes back, we get healthy, we get right. I think there's no team that we can't beat, if we're given our A game, obviously. I think a big piece to that is also Klay Thompson. Recently, he's been going through some struggles, and I think if he can just get in a rhythm and really not try to force shots, which is kind of who he is. Like, he's always been forcing shots, and that's why he's so great, because he makes those sometimes. But if he can get in a rhythm, just knocking down open threes, I think that's all we really need. And then obviously he could go off for 37 in any given quarter. So then my number 1 team is going to be the Phoenix Suns. They're 51-12. That speaks for itself. And obviously Cam Johnson game winner. Just games like that. Teams with players who could step up like that and just win a game, that just shows that you're a championship team where everyone has such a huge role and is stepping up on any given night. And then you have the stars. You have Chris Paul, Devin Booker now have finals experience. DeAndre Ayton is looking like one of the best bigs. If they're fully healthy going into the playoffs, I mean, I think they might be the biggest contender in the NBA.
Mm. Well, before we get into the East, I have a question for you. So, I mean, obviously the West has always sort of dominated the East, and it's been more competitive in previous years. But like, has the East surpassed the West this year?
I mean, that's tough because it's no question the East is deeper, with contenders.
Yeah.
But like I said, I think the Suns are a little bit ahead of anyone else in the East. So I think as far as like your top teams in each conference, I think the West still has the East beat, but I think the East is definitely deeper, full of teams that just have a shot of making a playoff run. Not necessarily contenders, but they have a lot of teams that could like make it out of the first round or even make it to the conference championship in a perfect scenario. So I think the East is deeper. I mean, it's kind of your opinion on what you want to do with that information, but I think they're pretty even, honestly.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you. I mean, you got teams like the Celtics, who've been playing good, and they have a great defense, and they're just gonna be good going into playoffs. I'm sure Alex will be happy about that. Um, and then obviously the Nets, if they can get something going, if they can get Kyrie back, get Ben Simmons going, and he can be a good role player. Let's not forget that. And then there's teams like the Cavs who are surprising. I mean, the East just looks good, and I think honestly, the title could be the East to lose because I mean we've seen these teams like the Bucks who won it last year. They all got this experience. I mean, there's newer teams like the Bulls who have some players that haven't really been in that spot, but the Heat have been there. I mean, but in the West, there's just those teams that can get there, like the Suns and the Warriors, and those top teams. But I think ultimately it could be the East to lose.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see come playoff time.
Yep.
All right, let's get into the East top 3. I'll start us off for this one.
All right.
So my number 3 most contending team in the Eastern Conference, I am going to have to go with the Miami Heat, the number one seed right now in the East. I mean, they're the number one seed. That speaks for itself, but I think they're such a deep team. They're just kind of lacking. Um, Outside of Jimmy Butler, I feel like they're lacking consistency. Really, like I don't know how much you can trust guys like Tyler Hero, guys like Duncan Robinson. Even Bam Adebayo's health has been a little bit of an issue this year. Like just some shaky things going into the playoffs that put them below these next two teams I'm going to talk about. So I think they're definitely very deep. Kind of like the Grizzlies, they have a lot of guys that can drop 30 on any given night, but I think they're kind of lacking star power compared to these other couple teams that I'm going to list ahead of them. Number two, I'm going to go with the Milwaukee Bucks, the defending champions. I kind of wanted to put them number one, but just not going to do that right now. I think the Bucks, obviously, like they're the most solid contending team I think in the East. Like they're making it at least to a conference championship. I think this season, like I can't see them losing as long as they get a top seed to those teams below them. Just because we've seen them do it. We see them do it last year. They've made it to the conference championship multiple times in the past few seasons. So not much to be said there, but we see what Giannis can do, and with Middleton and Holiday, that's an insane trio with shooters off the bench. They could run it back for sure. My number one most contending team in the East. This might come as a surprise, but it's the newly built 76ers with James Harden, Joel Embiid. They did just lose their first game with Harden back. Actually, Harden wasn't even playing in that game, I don't think. So they're still undefeated when that trio of Maxey, Embiid, and Harden does play. And then you have Tobias Harris still. You have guys off the bench that play a key role, like Matisse Thybulle and Korkmaz shooting off the bench. So I just think this team, with the star power it has, James Harden, Joel Embiid, I think that right now could be the best duo in the NBA. I think it is. And that team is going to be so hard to beat come playoff time.
All right. Some interesting stuff going on with your top three. I'm going to give my top three with an honorable mention. My honorable mention is actually going to be the Miami Heat. Even though they're the number one team in the East right now, the Heat have the highest floor, in my opinion, by far, and great coaching, which is what makes it really hard for me to put them an honorable mention. I could see them doing it. I wouldn't be surprised if they went far. But my thing in the NBA playoffs is you got to have that top 10 player to win you those playoff games. And I think they just don't have that. I think Jimmy Butler is their top scorer, their top guy that can get them buckets. He's not a top 10 player in my opinion. He's not like a DeMar like the Bulls have, or a James Harden or something like that, or Giannis. Like I think that the top three teams that I'm going to name after this have. And I think the Heat are more going to turn out to be a regular season team like they have in the past. I think they just they're sort of like the tryhards of the regular season, if you think about it like that. Like they go all out in these games. They have the best record for a reason. I mean, they're a really good team, but I just think that these other teams are going to show up. They're going to have that guy that's going to take over, and I just don't think the Heat have that. And then my third team that I'm going to go with as a contender is going to be the Chicago Bulls. I mean, the Bulls aren't even fully healthy as of right now. They don't have Lonzo and Caruso. They'll be very good when they're healthy. I mean, DeMar, as of right now, he is the clutchest player in the league, leading the league in fourth quarter buckets. I mean, the Bulls have closers, and that's what you need in the playoffs. I mean, DeMar, he's the king of the fourth quarter. He can take over at any point in the playoff games coming up. Obviously, he doesn't have as much experience. I mean, he did play with the Raptors in some first round exits, but other than that, not much experience. But I do like this Bulls team. I like the fire in their team, and I wouldn't be surprised if they do something. I wouldn't be surprised if I see them in the Eastern Conference Championship. But my second, I think I'm going to make my second the 76ers. Um, Obviously, they're newly built. We don't really exactly know what they're all about just yet. I mean, obviously, Embiid he's that guy. I mean, he might be the MVP front runner as of right now. He's just playing unbelievable. And then you add James Harden to the mix, who's been playing good as of right. They look like a great duo. It's hard for me to not put them at number one, but just like the things that happened in the past with the 76ers and James Harden, I just don't know if I can put them number one as like I know they're gonna get there, you know. And then number one, I'm gonna have to go with the Bulls. Been there, done that. My only thing with the Bulls, though, I mean the Bucks, is Brooke Lopez is a huge missing piece for the Bucks. I mean, this is me having them number one is totally changing if they don't have Brooke Lopez going into the playoffs. He's a defensive anchor. He's like a defensive. He's one of the defensive leaders now that PJ Tucker's gone, which I think was a huge piece for them last year. He's now in the Heat. But obviously you have that guy Giannis. You know what he's going to do in the playoffs. He's going to take over. And then they have guys around him like Chris Middleton who can heat up, and you also have guys like Drew Holiday, like you said. So I just like what they can do. They showed it last year, and I think they can contend again this year.
All right, so our West list were the same, but our East list definitely had some discrepancies there. I would also like to give some honorable mentions that didn't make my list. I think the Bulls, Joey had them 3. They're definitely a very fun team to watch, and they do have some closers. The Celtics been one of the hottest teams, if not the hottest team in the league this past month or so. And then my last honorable mention would also be the Brooklyn Nets. I mean, you put Kevin Durant, Kyrie, now Ben Simmons. I don't know when he's coming back. Seth Curry. That you can't leave them out of the talks, but they are the 8 seed, so it's going to be a tough ride to get them to the finals this year.
So Shane, would the Brooklyn Nets be your dark horse team?
Well, I don't know if
as
you
of
can
right
even
now,
call
since
them
they're
dark
lower.
horse. Yeah, sure. I mean, if we're talking about outside the top, 6 seeds?
Yeah.
Then yeah, for sure. They're definitely the most contending team with that criteria. I just don't think you can expect them to make it to the finals with the situation they're in, because like last year we saw Kevin Durant go crazy in the playoffs and they still just couldn't make it past the Bucks. A team like that, like I don't know with Simmons if he's gonna be back, like how that's gonna work, if that's gonna work in the span of time they need it to. They need it to develop really fast because they wouldn't have much time to build that chemistry going into the postseason. But with Katie and Kyrie, anything can happen. Like they could beat any team with their.
Yeah. I mean, KD's already playing good, but once they have even Ben Simmons and Kyrie Irving, they could be good. They could be a team to watch out for. But in the West, I think one of the teams you got to look out for as of right now is the Dallas Mavericks. I mean, they've just been really hot as of lately. Luka has looked really good. Just the team in general has looked really good. They've gotten some really good wins. They won in LA. They won in Golden State and at home against Golden State. Pretty impressive. What have they won the last 4 games or something like that? But they're a scary team right now. What do you think about them going into the playoffs?
I mean, I think if they keep this up with these players playing around Luka, such as Jalen Brunson right now, like if they can really help him out and not just rely on him to drop 40, 10, 10 a night, they are contenders, because with the star power of Luka Doncic, I mean anything can happen, especially in that Western Conference right now, which is very like shaky. Like teams even in the top 3, like the Grizzlies and Warriors, we could definitely see losing to Dallas in a playoff series if they drop down the standings a little bit. So I could see Dallas making a little push.
Yeah. I think the 5 spots are sneaky in both conferences, like the Celtics and the other in the Eastern Conference and the Mavs in the Western Conference. I mean, obviously the Celtics, probably the best defense in the NBA. They're such a good road team. Like, if you look at their road record, it's very good compared to a lot of the other teams. I mean, they can play in those environments, which is a good trait going into playoffs. And if you have a really good away record in college basketball, that's pretty insane. I'm just gonna put that out there because college basketball, these home teams have not been losing this season. We'll be getting into March Madness in the next pod. But anyway, the Celtics, they're also a team to watch out for. They can step it up. They've been playing some good basketball. Obviously, they have a guy in Jason Tatum.
Speaking of that, as we're filming this, there's 30 seconds left in the Celtics Nets game. Jason Tatum has 51 points, going back and forth in a duel with Kevin Durant, who has 37. It looks like the Celtics just iced it with a Jaylen Brown 3, but Tatum had some clutch buckets. Proving your point right there.
Yeah, what do you think is the Celtics limit, Shane?
I mean, I think they can go all the way because you would say the lack of experience is an issue, but this team, we forget, is experienced. Like Tatum got experienced right as he came into the league. He had some crazy battles with LeBron James going to that Eastern Conference Finals, like Game 7. Like we forget that Tatum had that much success that young of an age, and now he's just taking his game to new heights this season. If you still have guys like Marcus Smart playing key roles, Jaylen Brown is an insane number 2 option, honestly. And if some of these other role players can step up come playoff time, I think Tatum's star power is just great enough to get them to where they need to be.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, is there any other teams that you want to talk about, or is that it?
I think that is it.
All right, that just about wraps it up for this episode 29, I believe, of the Mayo Show. Talking about some NBA, we're finally getting into some basketball. We'll be getting into some March Madness next episode as the conference tournaments start tomorrow. Things are heating up. It should be a great rest of the month, and then we'll get into the NBA playoffs. And I mean, it's just a great time of year for sports. See you guys in the next one. Peace.